Perhaps sensing something in his mood, Albedo said nothing despite their lack of time. Ain't sighed. I feel nothing more toward a human I'm meeting for the first time than I would for a bug, but once I try talking to them, I start to get attached as if they were cute little animals. Is that why you swore on your honor along with your sacred name? Maybe, no. It was because of the strong will of someone prepared to die. He admired that. Gazef had a strong will, unlike himself. Albedo relay orders to the minions in the area. Check for any ambushing troops. If there are any, knock them out. At once. Our Lord Aints the headman is coming. Following Albedo's line of sight, Aints saw the headman heading their way with 2 villagers. Anxiety and unease had spurred them to run, and they were out of breath, but they began to speak as soon as they reached him, as if they couldn't even spare the time it would take to recover. Lord Aints, what should we do? Why has the captain refused to protect us and left the village? The headman's words contained more than fear. The feeling of abandonment was turning to rage. The captain did the right thing, Mr. Headman. The enemy is after him. If he stayed, the village would be the battleground. They probably wouldn't pass up the chance to kill the people. Him leaving was the best thing for you, so that's why he left. We should stay here then. No, I'm sure they'll come back for the survivors here. We can't run while we're surrounded, but they'll probably attack the captain with all they've got. That's our chance to escape. Let's take that opening. That was why he'd left the village in such a visible way. He was acting as a decoy to draw the enemy's focus. Comprehending the unspoken nuance that the captain didn't stand much chance of victory, the headman blushed and hung his head. The captain had gone to battle prepared to die in order to create a chance for the villagers to escape. The headman hadn't realized, and his misunderstanding made him angry. He must have been ashamed of himself. And here I was thinking, oh Lord Aints, what can I do? What should we do? What do you mean? We live near the forest, but we were never attacked by monsters. We were only lucky. We mistook luck for safety and forgot how to defend ourselves. The result is that many of our neighbors have been killed. We've been a burden on everyone. Not only the headman's expression, but those of the villagers behind him, too, were full of regret. There was nothing you could have done. Your opponents were veterans. If you had put up a fight, it's possible you'd have all died before I arrived. He tried to comfort them, but he didn't sense their sorrow letting up at all. Really, this was not something words would fix. All he could do was pray that time would heal them. Mr. Headman, we don't have much time. We should get going so the captain's resolve will not be in vain. Yes, you're right. What are you planning to do, Lord Aints? I'm going to keep an eye on things. I will escape with all of you when the time is right. We're bothering you again. Please don't worry about it. I promised the captain I would protect you. For now, please gather all the villagers in one of the bigger houses. I'll cast a bit of magic defense. He could feel the horse's agitation in his legs. Even though the mount was trained to be a war horse, or perhaps precisely because he was so trained, he'd picked up on the fact that they were heading to their doom. There were only 4 or 5 opponents, but they were spread out to surround the village. Because of that, the space between them was wide. They must have been creating a perfect cage somehow. In other words, a total trap. Step inside and the jaws of death would open. Gazef knew that, but he was going to try to break through. That was the only option he had. He had no chance of winning at range against casters. If he had some archers or someone with the talent and resources to fight at range, it might have been different. But since he didn't, he had to avoid a ranged battle. Fighting it as a siege would be ridiculous. Maybe if they'd had a stone fortress with big, thick walls, but wooden houses wouldn't do much to block magic. One wrong move and the village would be burned down. There was one last way, but he felt it was definitely the moral low road. He could fight inside the village, getting Aints Ulgaun caught up in it and forcing him to help. But if he used a plan like that, his reason for coming to this village would be lost. That's why he chose the thorny path. We'll attack the enemy to draw them out of their circle, and then retreat. We can't miss that chance. His men gave a spirited reply behind him, and he furrowed his brow. How many of us will make it out of this alive? It wasn't as if any of them were talent holders. They were all just what they seemed. But they had come up through Gazef's training and were the product of hard, unceasing work. It would be a shame to lose them. Gazef knew he was making a stupid move, but his men followed him anyway. He turned to shout an apology for getting them mixed up in this, but when he saw their expressions, he swallowed every word. They were the faces of warriors. Their expressions showed their determination to see this through despite knowing what lay in store. It wouldn't be right to apologize to these men who had decided to follow him despite the danger. He felt embarrassed, but his men peppered him with encouragement. "Don't worry about it, Captain. Yeah, we're here because we want to be. We're with you to the end. Please allow us to protect our country, its people, and our friends." Gazef no longer had any words. He faced forward and howled, "Let's go. We're gonna rip their guts out." Yara, Gazef spurred his horse and was off and running. His men followed. The horses galloped at full speed, kicking up dirt as they went across the plain straight as an arrow. As he rode, Gazef took out his bow and nocked an arrow. Rocking with his horse, he drew casually and let go. The arrow flew true and sunk into the head of a caster in front of them, or at least it seemed like it was going to. So these arrows won't do anything. If I had magic arrows, they'd work. But whining about things I don't have won't get me anywhere. The arrow had bounced off as if the caster were wearing a solid helmet. That bizarre hardness had to be due to some kind of magic spell. As far as Gazef knew, to penetrate magic that protected against projectile weapons, one needed an enchanted weapon. He didn't have one, so he gave up on shooting and put away his bow. The casters countered with magic. Gazef braced himself mentally to resist, but just then his horse screamed, rearing back and pawing the air with his hooves. "Whoa, easy, boy." Gazef frantically pulled the reins in and leaned forward to grab hold of the horse's neck. That split-second action saved him from falling. The sudden panic sent a chill down his spine, but he managed to suppress it. He had more important things to worry about. Gazef spurred his horse, but it wouldn't budge. He was breathing heavily and irregularly. It was as if his horse had another master, one more important than him. Someone had used psychic magic. They'd put a spell on his horse. Gazef must have resisted it, but his horse wasn't a magical creature. There was no way the animal would have been able to resist. He dismounted, irritated with himself for failing to foresee such an obvious attack. His men rode carefully around him, parting to either side. "Captain," the riders at the tail end of the group slowed down and held out their hands. They meant to pull him up onto one of their horses, but an angel, determined to not let him get away, flew over faster. Gazef took aim and whipped out his sword. He swung it with force. The strongest man in the kingdom brandished his sword, and it had the force to cut through anything. Though he cut deeply into the angel's flesh, it wasn't enough to kill it. The blood it coughed up dispersed as a puff of the same magical energy that made up its body. "I'm fine, turn around and charge." After giving the order, he glared sharply at the angel that had gotten away. It was seriously wounded, but was still raring for a fight and looking for an opening to attack him. I see. Something had felt off when he'd brought his sword down, and he realized now what it had been. Some monsters took very little damage unless a weapon of a specific make was used. Angels had that power. That's why it had been able to take that blow without falling. In that case, Gazef gathered the power within him and used the martial art focus battle aura. His blade began to glow faintly. Taking advantage of the opening, the angel brought down its crimson sword, but you're too late. To the strongest warrior around, it was way too slow. His sword flew. This slice couldn't be compared to the previous one. He easily ripped through the angel's body. Its structure collapsed, and the angel melted into the air. The way its feathers glittered as they disappeared was like a captivating illusion. If he weren't in such a hopeless situation, enveloped in the stench of blood, he might have marveled, but his focus was already elsewhere. Gazef scanned to see where the next attack would come from. A wry smile played across his face. The number of enemies had increased. In the couple of moments he'd taken his eyes off the battlefield, the enemy had gathered, along with their angels. It was clear they'd achieved it by no ordinary means. "Damn it, you can do anything with magic." He cursed the casters who could perform feats impossible for a warrior as if they were trivialities. But he calmly counted them and confirmed that it was all the members who had been encircling the village. So the village was no longer surrounded. "Okay, Sir Gaun, I'm counting on you." His heart filled with joy for being able to save the lives that had seemed beyond his grasp, but he remained on guard and stared down the enemy. The sound of pounding hooves grew louder in Gazef's ears. His men had turned and were charging. "I thought I told them once the circle started contracting, we were going to retreat. Those idiots, I'm so damn proud of them." Gazef ran like the wind. This was perhaps their biggest and only chance. Judging from the speed of the riders, their opponents would probably concentrate their magic on them to prevent them from getting closer. That would give Gazef the opportunity to turn this into a melee battle. That was the only thing he could do. His men's horses screamed and threw their front legs into the air just like his had. Some of the men fell and groaned. Then, the angels attacked. His men and the angels were evenly matched in terms of strength, but when it came to basic and special abilities, his men were overwhelmingly inferior. As he expected, half of the angels ganged up on them. It wasn't only that the spells the casters lobbed into the fray created a definite power gap. One after another, his men fell to the ground. Gazef ran, not even looking to confirm what he already knew. His aim was the commanding priest. Not that he thought killing him would make them back down, but it was the only way he and his men would survive. In response to his charge, more than 30 angels moved into his path. That proved they felt he was a serious threat, but it didn't make him happy. "You're in my way," he engaged the ace up his sleeve. Heat from his hand wrapped around his entire body. His flesh went beyond its limits, and he achieved hero level. At the same time, he simultaneously unleashed multiple martial arts, the equivalent of magic spells for a warrior. He glared at the 6 angels leaping for him, sixfold slash of light. It was a martial art performed at godly speed, over in a flash. One swing, 6 slashes. The 6 angels around him were cut in two and disintegrated into specks of light. From the slain theocracy's side came alarmed voices. From Gazef's men came cheers. His arm was prickling after using such a major art, but he could tell the pain was at a level where his muscles hadn't deteriorated. As if ordered to cut the cheering short, a new group of angels headed for them right away. One of them broke off and came swinging at Gazef. Instant reflex. The moment the angel's sword came down, the spell activated. Gazef moved in a blur. Before the angel's sword could rip through him, he dispatched the angel with his own sword. In one blow, the angel turned into specks of light. Gazef's offensive didn't end there. Flow acceleration. In fluid motions, he slashed through the angels coming toward him. He'd taken down another 2 angels after using a major art. Seeing their captain pull off a feat that would be impossible for a normal person began to give the men hope. They thought they could do it. They thought they could win, but the theocracy wasn't about to allow that. Their taunts drowned out the hopeful aura. Superb, but that's all. Priests who have lost angels summon the next. Bombard Stronov with magic. They'd been approaching hope, but were plunged back into despair. Not good, Gazef spat as he dispatched another angel. There were no more cheers, even when he got a kill. Men all swung their swords. They looked worried. They came up short in manpower, gear, experience, and individual strength. Now they had lost their main weapon, the hope that they'd win. Gazef dodged the swords that came down around him unconsciously. Then he hammered back at the enemy. He was definitely making angels disappear with each swing, but there were still so many. He would have liked to anticipate help from his men. But magical weapons were necessary to cancel out the angels' defensive ability. Without being able to use focus battle aura like Gazef, they didn't have magical weapons. Therefore, even if they could hurt the angels, they couldn't do fatal damage. That was a problem. Gazef bit his bottom lip and just kept swinging. How many times had he made the words death in one blow true? He'd used sixfold slash of light so many times he'd surpassed his previous record. A warrior of Gazef's caliber could normally use 6 martial arts at once. With his last resort in effect, he had activated 7 boosts. He was using one to boost his strength. He was using one to boost his mind. He was using one to boost his magic resistance. He was using one to temporarily enchant his weapon, and he was using one when he attacked. That made a total of 5 boosts. He wasn't reaching the limit because using a strong art took the focus of multiple normal ones. Sixfold slash of light in particular took the concentration of 3. Even Gazef only had 2 other major arts. One used all his focus. The other used the focus of 4 normal arts. By making good use of his arts, he was able to easily defeat the angels. But they were only summons anyway. If he didn't take out the summoner, there would just be more summoned. Biding his time until his opponent ran out of magic was one strategy. But Gazef would probably be out of energy before that happened. In actuality, his arms were starting to feel heavy, and his heartbeat was becoming irregular. Instant reflex would take his body thrown off balance by the previous attack and force it to return to attack stance. That made it possible for him to attack immediately, but the forced posture changes were a large burden on his body. Flow acceleration temporarily increased the speed at which his nerves worked, so he could attack faster, but extreme exhaustion was mounting in his brain. And on top of all that, he was using sixfold slash of light. It was too big a burden on his flesh. But if he didn't use it, he'd be overtaken. As many as you got, bring them on. Your angels are nothing, you bastards. The roar meant to overwhelm them froze the slain theocracy side for just a moment. Almost immediately, however, a composed voice broke the tension. Pay him no mind. The beast is just barking, trapped in his cage. Ignore it and keep chipping away at him. Just whatever you do, don't approach the beast, has long claws. Gazef glared at the man with the scar. If he could take down that commander, the course of this battle would surely change immediately. The problem was the angel at his side, different from the ones with the flame swords. Also, the distance seemed insurmountable. Defenses were put up again and again. He was far away. He was so far away. The beast is trying to break through the fence. Show him how futile that is. The man's composed voice bothered him. Even after entering the hero realm, Gazef had specialized in martial arts for close combat, so he didn't have much of a chance at range. So what? This was the only path left to him, so he just had to take it. Strength returned to his eyes and he set off running, but the path was as difficult as he'd imagined. The angel's burning sword stabbed and slashed at him. He countered instantly upon evading, but was suddenly assailed by a sharp pain, like he'd taken a heavy blow to the gut. Sensing the direction, he looked up and found a caster casting some kind of spell. If only you guys used healing magic like priests should, he said. His words were drowned out by the shock waves that pummeled him to the ground. He was confident that if there were fewer opponents, even if they were invisible, he'd have been able to dodge them by sensing the atmosphere and watching their eyes. But when there were more than 30, he couldn't handle them all. It was all he could do to shield his sword arm and face. A pain so terrible it seemed like he'd never get up ran through his entire body. So many places hurt that he couldn't tell where specifically he was injured. Jayag, unable to stand the taste of iron building in his throat, he coughed up fresh blood. The blood was thick and stringy, running down his chin. Gazef was still staggering from the round of invisible shock waves when the angels came at him with their swords. The blows he couldn't dodge hit his armor and were luckily repelled, but the shock that transferred through still hurt. He swiped at one angel, but it easily evaded his unbalanced attack. His breathing was rough, and his hands shook. Intense fatigue filled his entire body, whispering that he should lie down and rest. The hunt is in its final stage. Let's give the beast a rest. Don't let up with your angels, take turns attacking. He tried to catch his breath, but the angels surrounding him followed their commander's orders and came at him swinging. He dodged an attack from behind and blocked a thrust from the side with his sword. He took the jabs from flying angels overhead with the harder parts of his armor. He couldn't attack enough times to keep up with the ones he had to fend off. The fatigue and his dwindling muscular strength made killing one angel per swing almost impossible at this point. He barely had enough energy to use martial arts. His men were all defeated, and the enemy was concentrating their attack on him. He couldn't break through their circle. He sensed that death was right behind him. A moment's negligence would find him on his knees. He tried to put some fight into his body. Shock waves pummeled him again as he frantically endured. His eyes swam. No, he put all his body and soul into his back and legs, but something somewhere felt broken. The energy he swore he was putting in seemed to leak out. Suddenly he felt the prickle of meadow grass on his skin. That proved he had fallen. He panicked and desperately tried to stand, but he couldn't. The encroaching angels' swords chanted death. Finish him. Gang up so the job gets done beyond doubt. I'm going to die. His muscular arms trembled like jelly. He couldn't even lift his sword, but he couldn't give up. He clenched his teeth, and they made a horrible grinding sound. He wasn't afraid to die. He knew that just as he had taken many lives, one day he would die in battle. Aints had said he'd made enemies. Their hatred had turned into a blade that one day would be thrust into his gut. But he couldn't accept this attacking of multiple villages and killing of innocent people who had no way to fight back. All that just to trap him, that made him sick. He couldn't lose his life to people like that, and he couldn't stand not being able to save himself. Grah. I'm not that easy, he screamed, giving his body all he had. Drooling a mix of spit and blood, he slowly got to his feet. The determination of a man who shouldn't have had the power to stand caused a momentary retreat among the angels who had closed in. Just standing had Gazef out of breath and made his head spin. His body felt like it was made of lead.